There is a variety of new stuff that I want to talk about. The first of which being Bungie, I think, is doing layoffs. So this morning I'm sharing with you some of the most difficult changes we've ever had to make as a studio. Due to the rising cost of developments and industry shifts, as well as enduring economic conditions, it has become clear that we need to make substantial changes to our core structure and focus development efforts entirely on Destiny and Marathon. What were they focusing on before? Focus our development efforts entirely on Destiny and Marathon. What else were they doing? This means that beginning today, 220 of our roles will be eliminated, representing roughly... What?! Oh my god! I thought that they were going to say we're bringing our number of employees down from 220 to, like, 180 or something. They're cutting? They're laying off 220 people? That's fucking insane. One, how big is Bungie? Two, that's only 17% of the studio's workforce? Oh my god. How many people does it take to make Destiny? What? I am perplexed at what the studio does. These actions will affect every level of the company, including our most executive and senior roles. Today's difficult and painful day. Dude, this trend of, like, major studios being bought by even bigger companies and then for having layoffs only a couple years later is kind of ridiculous. Like, this is an L to Sony. Like, I know this was a different acquisition. Like, they don't... Bungie has its own CEO, and like it's a different business division. Like they retain their own CEO and board of directors, so they do make their own decisions. But this is still kind of crazy. Okay, they talk about Sony later on in the paragraph here. Also, I'm interested because I know that the part of the deal was Sony acquired Bungie, and they retained their own CEO and board of directors, but if their profits fell below a certain level, they would officially be absorbed into the PlayStation ecosystem, and their board of directors and CEO would be dissolved. So I wonder if that's also happening here, or they're doing this in an effort to avoid that. Today is a difficult and painful day, especially for our departing colleagues, many of which have made important and valuable contributions to Bungie. Our goal is to support them with the utmost care and respect for everyone affected by this job reduction. I don't know if doing the voice is disrespectful in this situation. This is a very serious thing. It's hard for me to read lore notes without doing a voice. And I mean, this is real life lore. For everyone affected by this job reduction, we will be offering a generous exit package, including severance, bonuses, and health coverage. I realize this is hard news, especially following the success that we have seen with the final shape, but we've navigated the broader economic realities over the last year, and after exhausting and mitigating options, this has become a necessary decision to refocus our studio and our business with more realistic goals as a viable financials. We are committing to two other major changes today that we believe will support our focus, leveraging Sony's strengths, and create new opportunities for Bungie and talent. First, we are deepening our integration of Sony Interactive. We are deepening our integration of Sony Interactive Entertainment, working to integrate 155 of our roles, roughly 12%, into SIE over the next few quarters. SIE has worked tirelessly with us to identify roles for as many of our people as possible, enabling us together to have a great deal of talent that would otherwise have been affected by a reduction of force. Interesting. So, I guess... So, okay, if I'm understanding this correctly, 220 roles are getting straight up cut. And then another 155 roles are basically going to become... Like, they'll work internally at Bungie, but they'll probably be, like, essentially an asset house for other Sony first-party studios. Is what I'm assuming that means. Which, hey, that's a lot better than... That's a lot better than getting laid off, and also it allows Sony to... roles that they would have outsourced to just, like, asset house or whatever, just keep technically in-house, I suppose. So... They have many. They have 850 employees total. I'm sick of these big companies not handling their operations and planning appropriately. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm under... I am under the belief that most layoffs are not necessary if they simply cut corporate profits. I don't want to speak specifically for every single company. That's not the case for every single company, but like this is a massive Bungie was massive before Sony, and now they're owned by Sony. I really think that like layoffs are almost never as necessary as any of these fucking bullshit articles end up making them sound like they are. Shout out to Nintendo actually, because Nintendo specifically does not do this. Like they do not lay off staff. I'm not saying that they've never done it, but like there is, I think, when the Wii U was failing, I think the CEO like took a 50% pay cut to avoid having to lay off staffs. And like the idea is that like if the company is in a position where they need to lay people off, that's a direct result of decisions made by the top level executives. And so if like the company's not doing well, the buck stops at a top down perspective. So it's like if the company is doing poorly, the person in charge takes responsibility for that, and they're the ones who takes the hit. It's probably because they're a Japanese company, but also so is Sony. So it's like but W Nintendo for doing that. They're great about labor shit that a lot of other U.S. companies are not. All right, and second, we are working in PlayStation Studios leadership to spin out one of our incubation projects, an action game set in a brand new sci-fi fantasy universe, to form a new studio within PlayStation Studios to continue promising development. What? This is interesting. This article keeps getting more and more fascinating. This is what I was hoping Bungie was doing. I was really hoping that after Sony acquired Bungie, that they would start developing a new smaller title that like might not necessarily be as like commercially viable, but like would just be a cool bonus project, because it's such 850 employees. It's such a big studio. And they have like they do have a history of like other things other than just like multiplayer shooters. So I was hoping that this was in development, and it's cool that at least this is not getting cut, that they're not just canceling this project. It's interesting that they're deciding to spin it off into a new studio, probably because PlayStation wants whatever that is to be a PlayStation exclusive. It's probably there was definitely clauses in this acquisition, because Destiny didn't become a PlayStation exclusive title. Marathon's not going to become a PlayStation exclusive title. There was definitely clauses in this agreement that if profits drop below a certain level, certain aspects of Bungie's business would just become straight up PlayStation productions. And I think that this is one of those things that hasn't dropped low enough for them to dissolve their board of directors and their CEO yet, but they are siphoning off a portion of that studio into a sub-studio that is owned under PlayStation first-party studios, and they'll probably have a lot more like direct control over what that project is. I'm assuming that's the reason that they're spinning it off into a new studio. This time will be a tremendous change for our studios. Let's unpack how we ended up in this position. It's important to understand how we got here. Bungie made a new company that's a third party now. How does that work? So that's so confusing. Yeah, so basically Sony acquired Bungie, but it was a weird acquisition. That Sony acquired them, but not directly under like the PlayStation subsidiary, I don't think. And there was an arrangement made where Bungie would lend its expertise and some of its internal development tools to other PlayStation studios to help them to help expedite the development of some live service stuff, because obviously Bungie has a lot of proprietary technology and software related to like live service things in regards to Destiny and stuff like that. So PlayStation wanted access to that technology. The main reason PlayStation acquired Bungie was actually, it wasn't for Destiny. It was for access to their proprietary technologies that they were using for Destiny in order to like make a functioning live service thing. And so they figured that if they bought them and acquired them, they can expedite the development of a lot of their live service projects exponentially, because now they have all these tools and all this background. But Bungie operates as a separate entity under PlayStation. They have their own board of directors. They have their own CEO. They make their own decisions. Technically, there's a limit to what PlayStation is allowed to tell them they can do. However, there was a clause, not for creative purposes for sure. I mean, they also do have Bungie review their live service projects and stuff. That's one of the reasons that supposedly Last of Us Part 2 was canceled, was because Bungie gave it a poor review, which is like, why do you give them so much control over, like, who bought who here? But there was provisions in the acquisition that said that if profits, like, if they didn't meet certain financial factors, aspects of their independence would be chipped away. And I think what's going on here is PlayStation's like, okay, profits drop below this level, you're in breach of this article of the contract, so you have to, so the extra project stuff that's not Destiny and Marathon, that now becomes officially a PlayStation Studios project and has to move under a different subdivision that is owned entirely by PlayStation Studios. And that's probably what this whole art section right here is about. I'm connecting some dots here. I'm doing some constellations about this. I'm looking at the dots in the sky and I'm drawing arbitrary shapes out of it. But I think I'm getting pretty close to what's actually happening here. Again, this, if anything, this is like cynical, because it's like, how much of this was a gambit to get more ownership over the company you bought? I care more about the 220 people you're laying off. Like, that's, it's cool that you relocated 155 of your roles, but like, why are 220 people also not just relocated to other parts of PlayStation? Again, layoffs, I feel like in most circumstances are not as necessary as like a lot of these people make it sound, but we eventually realized that this model stretched our talent too thin, too quickly. It then forced our studio support structures to scale at a larger level than we could have realistically supported, given our two primary products in development, Destiny and Marathon. Additionally, in 2023, our rapid expansion ran headlong into broad economic slowdown, a sharp downturn in the games industry. Our quality missed with Destiny 2 Lightfall. That's interesting that they are like kind of owning up to Lightfall being poorly received. And the need to give both the final shape and Marathon the time it needed to endure. Both projects delivered at the quality our players expect and deserve. We were overly ambitious, our financial safety margins were subsequently exceeded, and we began to run into the red. After this new trajectory became clear, we knew that we had to change our course and speed. We did everything we could to avoid today's outcome, even with exhaustive efforts undertaken across leadership and product teams to resolve the financial challenges. These steps were simply not enough. As a result, today we must say goodbye to incredible talent, colleagues, and friends. I really hope somebody at the top also, like, they did say executives were also cut, but yeah, like, I do, in a situation like this where we're talking about like such a large portion of a workforce being cut, I really hope there is responsibility being taken at the top. Like, there's whoever was in charge of the decisions that led to these should also face repercussions, not just the workers at the bottom who had nothing to do with the decisions that led to this situation. This will be challenging time. This will be a challenging time for Bungie, and we need to help our teams navigate these changes in the weeks and months ahead. This will be a hard week, and we know our teams will need time to process, to ask questions, to absorb the news. Today and over the next several weeks, we will host team meetings and town halls, team breakdown sessions, and private individual sessions to ensure that we are keeping our communications open and transparent. Bungie will continue to make great games. We have over 850 team members building Destiny and Marathon. We will continue to build amazing experiences that exceed player expectations. There will be a time to talk about goals, projects, but today is not that day. Today our focus is on supporting our people. Pete. Interesting. This has been a fascinating read. I'm glad I didn't pre-watch. I'm glad I didn't pre-read this, because this has been, A new path for Bungie caught my interest, and then as I started reading it, I was like, oh, okay, they're just announcing layoffs. And then this whole thing ended up being far more intriguing and complicated than I was expecting. I wonder when Sony will talk about this new game. So apparently they had a lot of games in incubation, and one of them stood above the rest to be spun off into a new studio. Fascinating.